And Mary somehow managed to stay in France when Mary Boleyn, when everyone else went back. So they had connections, which was through their ambitious family. And so there she was, and the young new king was Francois I.
Oh, and that's how she met him. She ended up in France.
How she met him, and he'd hurriedly had to get married to his cousin Claude. So not a match, of love at all.
Okay, so he was married, and
he just got married hurriedly.
He just got married, and then him and Rose start hitting it off.
Mary.
Him and
that's right.
Mary
Boleyn,
right? Oh.
Yes, Mary Boleyn's been let out of the. When you've got a racetrack and the horses are let out of the gate.
Yeah.
That was her, right, I'm away from my family. I'm in France. I can do what I like, basically. And she went mad. She had the best time and was just like learning how the French court was quite licentious in those days, more so than the English court. And so she loved it, and she was flirting with everybody and obviously caught Francois' eye. But because he wanted to churn out babies at this point, the other king hadn't had any children because he'd died a few months after his marriage. So he was under pressure to produce the offspring. And so he wanted to keep any flings or mistresses quiet from the queen. And so hence, there's hardly any evidence that they did have an affair, but there's a throwaway line, which I can mention later. But where the two kings meet, Henry VIII and Francois I. And they take as an indication that Mary had a fling with him.
And what kind of fling was this? Was it quite a traumatic one? Was she sort of madly in love with him and he wasn't?
Well, we didn't know that. We haven't got enough evidence. So being a storyteller, obviously I'm padding it out in the book, and she's got a whole chapter to herself with her sister and Henry VIII. But she was, I think, quite a free spirit, which will come out as you see when we go through what Jackie found in the astrology. I don't think she was devastated when he got bored of her and set his eye at some other woman.
Okay.
I think she just really made the most of it.
So how did you join the dots? Was it Jackie Wrenn, the astrologer, that helped you to join the dots? And what was it that kind of convinced you that your character Rose that you were working with was in fact Mary Boleyn?
Well, I'd already had all of those nailed down, all the location synchronicities.
So it was locations, dates of birth again. Did that come into this one or not?
There's some later on, but it's a whole backstory how I discovered, which I'll go into with Francois I and his connection to France. But there was, so that's in the book, all of those clues. There was this conversation with Henry VIII had come over to show off. He hoped to marry Anne Boleyn, but he was still legally married to Catherine of Aragon, the first wife. And this is many years after the affair with Francois. And by this time, Mary had also got over an affair with Henry VIII, which is alleged because they kept that quiet. So there's a pattern here. Right, with this pattern that happened in this affair that Rose and James were having. And it was a forbidden affair, had to be kept secret. And then Henry VIII had leaned in and Francois I was pointing over to Mary Boleyn on the field, wherever they were, probably jousting or something, watching. And he said, I call Mary my English mare because I ride her so often.
Oh.
And so that stuck, and then other historians have referred to the fact that there was a lot of rumpy-pumpy going on and bodice ripping and everything. So
that's the throwaway line you were saying that sort of convinces you that Mary and Francois did have.
Yes, that was it's not confirm for definite, but it's alluded to in
So
history.
you've mentioned this other character, Rose, is in modern times, got this situation with this other character, James. This is in modern times. Does James have a counterpart here? Don't tell me that he's the king.
Oh yeah,
he
absolutely.
is the king.
Yeah, I'll give you some clues as to why.
Okay.
So they look really similar. So it doesn't always happen, but it happened in this case where he's got straight dark hair. There's lots of portraits of Francois I with his dark straight hair when he was younger, and he's got a Roman nose, which obviously it's got a little bit of a bump here and then it comes down. Now, James looks identical, right?
Wow.
Okay.
And James actually hates his nose and he tries not to be photographed with it to the side because of that.
Okay.
Sounds like
so
me.
That's something. So though it's funny and it doesn't always happen by any means, but character can be similar as well. So we'll go into that now. What Francois I was known for was being into the arts and music, and he set up this academy that's still going today, 500 years later. And he just was a bit of a playboy. He really didn't think he was going to be the king. And, Louis VII was worried because he thought, well, he's second in line for the king. And if something happens, he might just become king. And he tried to send him to go with the army to where their camp was to kind of toughen up a bit. But it was no good because Francois I was a bit of a dandy. He really wasn't interested in being a warrior and an alpha male or anything. And he had a bit of a reputation. So he started messing around on camp, that type of thing. And then, so obviously Rose and James had that spark where they realised, they were attracted. And so Rose described it to me as a karmic bond, like you were saying, a soul contract. And she'd already come out of the end of that relationship a couple of years later when she approached me. And so I asked Jackie to have a look and if she could weave her magic and see what the planets and the stars revealed about this. So she looked at Francis' birth chart because we knew when he was born, and she discovered that he had, I'm going to read this because I don't know what this means a lot of the time. He had Pluto in his 5th house, and that is associated with sexual love affairs. And it wasn't in a good aspect of Venus, but that meant he didn't deal very well with his women, which means that what you would call a player in these days. And Rose confirmed that, that correlated to James' behaviour because he was, being a musician, he was in the arts and the music like Francois. And he'd been off travelling, touring with bands, and you know what the groupies are like. And, whether or not he had a girlfriend at home, he was out there, enjoying his life and all the adoration that comes with it. So there was a big correlation to their character and personality. So that's two things. Now, you're going to love this, right? Location synchronicity. I'd already discovered that James had actually lived in France, in Paris. And obviously the Louvre Palace was the palace of the French king in those days. And he'd lived 15 minutes drive from the palace in Saint-Denis. And Saint-Denis is actually the red light district now. But at the time of Francois, it was the place where the basilica was, where they would get inaugurated or, crowned, coronations and deaths and weddings would be held there. And that was indeed where Claude, the new Queen of France, was married to Francois I. And that was on, get this date, the 10th of May, 1517. 17 comes up a lot in my book for other people. It's peppered all the way through the book as a significant date. But James had actually moved to play in a French band when he was 17. So there was that number popping up. He was only there for a year. But he said one of his favourite buildings was the Louvre, you know.
Mm-hmm. And he only lived 15 minutes away, so 15, 17.
Oh,
that's right. 15. Yeah, you spotted that.
Okay,
well done.
So numerology comes into this quite a bit.